Let's talk about sorting algorithms. So right now, we're going to talk about two different sorting algorithms, and they work a little bit differently from one another. And so you want to sort of think about, if you have a list that's unsorted and you want to perform a search on it, maybe binary search is the way you want to go, so you want to sort it first. Okay, so one way to do that is the bubble sort. And you can think about bubble sort as taking the big element and bubbling it up to the top. So taking the biggest element in the list and bubbling it up to the top. So this is the code, the Python code for a bubble sort. You can find this in the textbook as well, right? So if you go on the textbook and you go to the section on algorithms and you look for bubble sort, you can find this code to play with it in Python Tutor and sort of run it and see what's happening to your list every time. But what it does is it runs through every element in your list. That's what's happening in this line here. Run through every element in your list. And this part right here is the bubbling part. So you're going to take the elements and bubble the big ones up to the top. So how you're going to do that is you're going to always compare two elements in your list. So let's try it once. So this is my list 5, 1, 4, 2, 8. And my goal is to sort this list. So on the first pass, what's going to happen is it's going to start by comparing the 5 and the 1. Since 5 is bigger than 1, it's going to swap them. So swap the 5 and 1 since 5 is bigger than 1. Now it's trying to bubble that 5 up to the top. So it's going to compare these two elements now. And because 5 is bigger than 4, it's going to swap again. 1, 4, 5, 2, 8. Swap because 5 was bigger than 4. We're moving our way up, so I'm going to compare those two. Again, 5 is bigger than 2, so swap again. 1, 4, 2, 5, 8. And now I'm comparing these last two, and because 5 is in the right spot, I didn't do any swapping, okay? So at the end of the first pass, my list looks like this. But what I know is that this 8 is in the right spot. So at the end of the first pass, the last element has to be the biggest one in your list because of the way the bubbling works. Okay, so then I do the second pass. And remember, I'm looking at this list, 1, 4, 2, 5, 8. So I'm going to start at the beginning again. I'm going to compare 1 and 4. Since 1 is already smaller than 4, I'm going to leave it as is, so no swap. Now I'm going to compare 4 and 2. 4 is bigger than 2, so swap them. And now I'm going to compare 4 and 5. They're already in the right order, so I'm not going to swap. And remember, I already knew 8 was in the right spot, so I'm not actually going to do any comparisons with that 8, okay? So now what I know, it's at the end of the second pass that these two elements are in the right spot. It turns out I know, because I can see it after inspection, that the whole thing is sorted. But the computer doesn't know that, so it's going to keep going, and it's going to do a third pass. And remember, in the third pass, it already knows that those last two elements are in the right spot, so it's not even going to consider them. So it's going to look at the 1 and the 2. Nothing's wrong, so it's going to leave them. It's going to look at the 2 and the 4. They're in the right order, so it's going to leave them. And then it's done. So now it knows that these 3 elements. It would keep going. It would do a fourth pass just to check that those last 2 elements, 1 and 2, are in the right spot. Okay? So that's how bubble sort works. It takes the biggest elements and bubbles them to the end of the list every time. The other sort that we're going to talk about is an insertion sort. And an insertion sort is kind of like the sort you think about that you do when you're like sorting playing cards in your hand. You have this 2 piles. One is the sorted half and one is the unsorted half. You pick a card in the unsorted half and you put it in the right spot in the sorted side. And then you pick another card in the unsorted side and you put it in the right spot. So you're moving cards from an unsorted section to a sorted place. And so here's the code, and I'm going to give you sort of a visual of how this works. So if you think about it, when you start, the whole thing of cards is unsorted. And then you say, I'm going to take this 3, I'm going to put it in front of the 4. So now I have 2 halves to this list. I have the sorted half in red, with the 3 and the 4. And then I have this unsorted portion of the list over there, the 2 through 6. So I'm going to take that 2, I'm going to put him where he belongs. So now again, I have this sorted part and this unsorted part. So I'm going to take the 10. Oh, the 10's already in the right spot, so I'm done. So now I have this sorted part and the unsorted part. So I'm going to take the 12. The 12's in the right spot, done. So I have this sorted part and the unsorted part. So look at the 1. The 1 has to go all the way to the front. Okay, here I am. Sorted part, unsorted part. So I look at the 5, where does he go? Sorted part, unsorted part. The 6 is the last number in your unsorted half, so you put him where he goes, and you end up with a sorted list. So all of this code up here is to do just that. It's like gonna go through the whole list. That's the for loop up here at the top. This part is the looking for where the first unsorted element goes and putting it in its right spot. And in the end, we get a sorted list. So those are 2 kinds of sorts. We're going to talk more about like how fast they run, which one might be better depending on what kind of list you have. But right now, you're just going to practice sort of running those 2 sorts of sorts.